Tottenham TV, and today we're going to be reacting to that Ange Postecoglou interview on Optus Sport yesterday with Mark Schwarzer. He seems to be doing a lot of interviews with Mark Schwarzer over the course of the season, and this one was probably his most testing one, I would say, over the course of the season. Quite a lot of interesting snippets coming out of it. But just before we get into it, do scroll down, smash that subscribe button, because only 60% of you are subscribed to this channel that are watching. So 40% of you, get on your bike and get that subscribe button.
What's stopping you?
Smashed.
You're watching it every day, but you're not subscribing. As pay your rent, as one person would say. Pay your rent.
Pay your rent. That costs nothing.
Exactly.
Just
free rent. It's not
just
bad.
just the click of a button. But yeah, we are on all our platforms as well, such as TikTok, X, Facebook, and Instagram. But let's get into this interview, and we're going to take it bit by bit. And first and foremost, he was talking about. He said that he believed that the club got the start of the season wrong, as they underestimated the impact of playing in Europe again. He says, it's been a tough season. There's no hiding from it. It hasn't gone anywhere near the levels we wanted. We started off with the goals and ambitions around what we want to achieve. There's frustration that we've seen glimpses of what we want, but then enormous setbacks and our inconsistencies, particularly in the league. We've performed well in the Cups, better than last year, but in the league, we've been nowhere near it. And then he's saying, like, there's obvious reasons for that, but even within that context, it's just been a really disappointing season. The domino effect of certain things happening again, you try and assess things as you go along, but I think we got the start of the year wrong. It's becoming increasingly challenging for footballers. They don't get the traditional break. I think we went into the season really hard and underestimated the challenges of Europe with 2 extra games, having a cup run, all those things. You add into the mix losing key players early on. It feels like we've been chasing our tails since then, and we haven't been able to get ahead of the challenges we've had. And then something else happens and it shifts. That goes back to the start of the year. We maybe would have had taken a different approach, knowing the kind of season we had ahead. I mean, what sort of club doesn't plan appropriately, though? That's the frustrating thing about it, is he's saying that the preparations for the season weren't really adequate for what we had ahead with the 4 competitions. I mean, we all knew, what we had ahead of us with the Europa League and the Cups, and we all wanted out, and how important the Cups were for us this season. I mean, that's completely on the club, and that's on pretty much everyone involved. Like, why not good planning was gone into this season?
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. I mean, fair play to being honest, but I mean, the honesty doesn't really make him look great, I would say, to be honest, because you're paid, millions and millions of pounds to prepare for this season. The whole club is £1 billion enterprise, and they don't plan well enough for the season ahead, and in terms of kind of knowing what is going to be required. And that is not a good look on anyone, really, especially Ange, if he's admitting that, when he should basically be aware that there's 2 extra games in Europe this season. Hopefully, we don't go out in the second round of the Carabao Cup like we did last season. So, you should expect the longer run in the Carabao Cup to last season. So I don't really understand why they wouldn't have been prepared. Now, the only thing I'm a bit unsure about is what he says at the beginning of the season, we got it wrong because we went too hard at the beginning of the season. Now, what does he mean by that? Is he talking about the way we play? Is he talking about we went too full throttle at the beginning of the season when we shouldn't have done it? Or is he talking about rotation, like we didn't rotate enough? I'm trying to piece out what he means by we went too hard at the beginning of the season.
From when I initially watched it, my initial reaction was that we went too hard in terms of the way we were playing, just full gung-ho straight, and like we didn't take any breathers, where maybe with the way that we play, with the amount of games that we have, we should have just kind of like eased our way into the season.
Yeah, so you think it was style of play?
That's what I think, yeah.
Yeah, instead of rotation.
Because when you look at it with rotation, we actually commended them for rotating quite well between Europe and the league at that point in the season.
Yeah, I agree. I thought they did rotate when it came to, obviously from Premier League games they didn't really, but when it came from Europe to Premier League, they were rotating quite a lot. So, yeah, I doubt, he probably doesn't mean that, although a lot of people still accuse him of not rotating at the beginning of the season, but maybe it was kind of the way we played. Did he go full throttle? Like I compare it to, even first of all, I compare it to like Pochettino. Like, we would usually have a fairly slower start to the season a lot of the time, and then come like November time, we'll kind of hit the acceleration and go full throttle. Even when you look at someone like Pep, similar kind of that has a lot of the time we would have a fairly slow start to the season. Not always like a bad result-wise start, but in terms of, a lot of people always questioning, what's going on with Man City? Is this the year that they drop off? And then come like December time, they hit the acceleration. Even if Arsenal, last 2 years, especially last year, they were quite slow, and then come December time, they hit the acceleration. So maybe that's what he's talking about, Ange Postecoglou. He maybe felt like, for whatever reason, he felt like he'd go from the start as fast as they could, and especially when you consider, what players had a break in the summer. A lot of them didn't, and Udogie as well was come back from an injury. Romero had very little break, and he was frustrating to the action. So I think it's I guess whether it be at Tottenham or not, it will be a learning curve for him. But unfortunately, whether he'll get another chance to learn from his mistakes here, not sure.
It just stinks of like schoolboy error, and like as much as like this might be the first time Ange, well, it's not though, is it? Because he dealt with Celtic in 2 cups and in Europe as well. But I guess the difference is that Celtic are by far the best team in that league, and they can probably, even at 50% stake, can beat the majority of teams in that league. Where Spurs, that we need to be at our best to really go at it, totally. So it just stinks of schoolboy errors to me from Ange, from the club. I mean, the club should know better as well, because they've been here in this situation many a time trying to build squads for European football and not been at the right levels to have a squad to compete in all fronts. So, I mean, from everyone involved, it just stinks of incompetent behaviour, really.
And that's what was costly, because we got all those injuries, and maybe it is because we the start of the year we had. Well, that's what he's, I guess, insinuating. It's because of the start of the year. But I don't understand why it would make a difference at the start compared to maybe trying to play that way during the season. I guess maybe because I guess the theory is if they feel their way into the season a bit more instead of going like that straight away, it would have helped, maybe. I don't know.
I think what he's saying is they went so hard, then things went against them. They got all those injuries, and they're just never really able to recover it.
But I'm saying, would it made a difference if they went hard? Because if that's the way you want to play, right? You have to. If that's what you want to do, you have to implement that at some point, don't you?
Look, I think there's like different levels you can go. You don't have to go at a million miles an hour all the time. And I think, like you say, with a Man City or with Spurs under Pochettino, you kind of feel your way into the season, and then at one point when the business end, or just before the business end of the season comes, December, January time, then is when you need to go seeing as you're driving a car, right? Start off in gear 1, then go to gear 2, gear 3, gear 4, and then ultimately ending up the season in gear 5.
I assume why he's probably got it wrong is, I think how we ended last season probably plays a factor in it, I would say. Because after we ended last season so poorly, he probably didn't want to have a slow start to the season. And maybe that's ultimately what ended up costing us.
Yeah, potentially. But look, it's not good whatever way you want to slice it and whatever way you want to look at it. The next kind of quotes we got are Postecoglou adamant about the footballing schedule that has a massive impact in Spurs' form and overall season. He says that there's no doubt that the schedule is too draining. There will come a breaking point. There's no doubt about that. What's happened to us this year, you saw with Newcastle and Brighton last year, teams that look like they're in the ascendancy fall off, mainly because of their injuries more than anything else. It happened to us this year. It affected Villa to a certain extent. It's affected City to a certain extent. I think you'll see it affect teams in Europe. You'll see it affect teams in Europe next season. At some point, the league will have to sit down and say, this is unsustainable. We need to make some changes, whether that's a break or less games. That will definitely come to a head. And I do agree with him in this instance. I mean, you look at all the top leagues around Europe, they all take a sustained break in December or whenever it is. When they're taking a break, we're actually ramping up our football in this country. We have like 3 games in the space of a week over the Christmas period. And look, the Christmas period is everyone's favourite time of year because of that. But they were starting to think about and starting to implement kind of winter breaks and then staggered winter breaks and all this kind of stuff. I don't know why. I don't know if they put that on a halt this year or something, but it feels as though, like, particularly in England, there's much more thought about how do we maximize the kind of revenue potential and money coming into the Premier League, as opposed to thinking about player welfare and player safety. Whereas other kind of leagues, they do think a lot more about player safety, player welfare. They care a lot more about the teams playing in Europe as well. They kind of adjust the fixture list accordingly, whereas in England, they don't really do that. So I think the Premier League does have a lot to answer for in this sense.
Yeah, 100%. The Premier League's kind of stance on it is kind of they don't really care about the European competitions. Their product is the Premier League, and they're going to protect that by any means necessary. If that means putting Liverpool on a 12:30 after they've played a night Champions League game, they'll do it because they know that that's what will get the eyeballs, is having Liverpool on TV, and they'd rather screw over Liverpool than not have Liverpool on TV for a week
but
or something.
What's the difference between doing that, putting them on a 5:30 on a Saturday, or putting them on a Sunday on a TV game? You know what I mean? Or putting them on a Monday night
because
football.
they've run their data arrive, and their data probably suggests, we'll get more views if they play at this time, so we're going to put them there regardless. To hell with anything else, we care about our viewing figures. That's all they care about. That's what this is all about.
It's going to end up hurting them in the long term.
Of course,
the product
it already
does.
Go
down and down and down.
It already does. You look at La Liga. If Madrid have a game on the Tuesday, a knockout game, they'll play them on the Friday.
Yeah.
They'll adjust it. But for the Premier League, they'll probably think, maybe we won't get as many views if we put them on a Friday, so we're not going to do it. We're not going to help out our teams because they don't care. They don't care about the attrition of the players. They don't care about how well they're doing in other competitions, even though it'll raise the profile of the Premier League if they get more European winners. They don't care about that. What they care about is the viewing figures from the Premier League. It's why, look, I just think that the Premier League, the people who run it, are very kind of there needs a complete sea change there. There needs new leadership in the Premier League because they're not moving with the times. They're very, very old school. It's why we kind of still have the 3 p.m. blackout, albeit that's not to do with viewing figures, but it's still a very antiquated kind of rule because they're living in the past, these people who are head of the Premier League. And I think that is why we're having these problems with kind of them trying to protect their product, but they're not doing it in the best way, in my opinion. And it's only hurting the product. And I don't know if how it's gonna change unless the leadership kind of changes from the top. But yeah, I don't see that changing anytime soon, to be honest. And it will come to a head because you've got the Club World Cup now coming, which is going to hurt only Man City and Chelsea are playing in it, but that's another competition.
But even look at the Man City and players. Like, what kind of rest are these guys going to get
it's
over
ridiculous.
the course of the summer? Because once the Club World Cup's over, pre-season pretty much starts like a week or two later. So, I mean, what sort of pressure are they putting on and load are they putting on these players? It's nothing short of a disgrace, really.
They're going to have to, I reckon Man City and Chelsea will probably have a really slow start to the season because I reckon they will give their players a bit of a rest and they'll come back late to pre-season like they do with international tournaments.
And you know what? The Premier League aren't the only culprits of this. Like, you're looking at the clubs generally themselves. I mean, look at Spurs, for example. As soon as the final whistle goes, they're jetting their team off to Australia to play a post-season friendly. I mean, what sort of malarkey, what sort of rubbish is that all about? Like,
they're all culpable. FIFA, UEFA, everyone is.
Yeah.
They're all culpable of it. You know, UEFA adding 2 more games. There are some teams this season who played 4 extra Champions League games, 2 in the group and potentially 2 playoffs, when there were already a stacked calendar. You got FIFA who are implementing this Club World Cup. You got FIFA as well expanding the World Cup as well to get more games and all these different things. There's more and more and more. There's going to be one point where at some point it's going to come to a head where there's literally no summer break at all. Ever. FIFA trying to get the World Cup every 2 years as opposed to every 4. The only way UEFA would respond to that is making the Euros every 2 years instead of every 4, which means every year would have an international tournament. Like I wouldn't like if that's probably something that's been discussed. Like all these things are around football. There's going to be a breaking point. Unless they just allow like 50-person squads or something, and then that changes the whole dynamic of the game. So, yeah, where the game is heading, there is 100% a breaking point, and I don't think we're very far off it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, to be honest. And well, having said that, and if Ange Postecoglou is very aware of this and knows this and talks about it regularly, players come out already and talk about how much strain they're on, too much games, it's not fair to the players and everything like that. Then do you not think like Ange should be adjusting? I know he did later on when we did get the injuries, but do you not think like even throughout the course of the season you need to be adjusting the kind of playing style and not going full throttle and not basically being the highest running team in the league because of it.
Well, someone has to be the highest running team in the league.
Yeah, but he runs a lot. It's not just about being the highest running team. It's about putting extra strain on your players as well. Yeah,
potentially. I think clearly this season you can see the amount of injuries we've had. I think he probably admits that. Oh, he has admitted. We got that wrong at the beginning of the season. So I think he's probably admitted that. I think we shouldn't have gone so hard at times this season. I think we probably did run too much, or maybe at points we could have slowed down and had a bit more control and all these kind of things. So yeah, I completely agree.
And the last bit of quotes we've got for you is about Ange admitting that he feels like he's lost a large portion of the Tottenham fans' belief in him as a manager. And he says, "I've always said I hate telling people how they should feel, so there's no doubt that a large portion of the Tottenham fans have lost belief in what we're doing. I think they were encouraged by what they saw last year for sure, and that hasn't manifested itself. I'm still optimistic and bullish about the squad we've got. There's enormous growth in them once we can navigate through this and being through a tough time. Surviving through a tough time can be such a strong uniter of people, because you think there's nothing down the track which will be anywhere near as bad as what we've gone through. We've survived and we've stuck together. Part of this is people will see, aside from the obvious, the disappointing results, they still see the squad, which I think is exciting. I guess the biggest way we can influence that is by giving them hope. Still got things to play for in Europe, and we've got to try and finish the season in a positive way." I mean, he's definitely right in what he's talking about the fans. I do think, a large chunk of the fans have lost belief.
Well, you would when you're 14th, I think, and that's the reality of the situation. He's not blind to that. And I think he's right. He is right. When you've lost as many games as we have, you are going to lose a big section of the fan base, 100%. What's interesting about his answer is when he says he's bullish and all this kind of stuff, he doesn't talk about himself. He talks about the squad. He said, "I'm bullish about the squad that we have and all these different things," but he doesn't say he's like bullish about himself turning it around, if you know what I mean. So I wonder if it's, sometimes in interviews it's about what's not being said rather than what's being said. And I wonder if he's not mentioning like his belief that, I don't know, he can turn it around or he can still be a success here. Is that him kind of unconsciously not saying it because maybe he does think he's on his last legs here, potentially? Maybe. I don't know. That's what I'm feeling. But
yeah, I don't know about that. I still think, I think when he's talking about the squad, I think it's about him managing the squad, and I think he puts himself within the squad. Do you know what I mean?
Does he?
Part of the squad.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he would mention himself a bit more, which he doesn't. He only kind of mentions the players in the squad. But I do agree with him when he says that if you do come through a tough time, like we have done this season, very tough, and you come out with it with some success, like winning that Europa League, that would strengthen the players' belief in him, I would say, and that would also strengthen, a few fans. That would also get a lot of fans back on side if we were to win that competition. And all of a sudden, I think you'd go into next season with this unbelievable belief that even if things are going wrong, there's still get success out the end of it, because we've already shown we've been through. Doesn't get much tougher than what we've been through this season, and we still came out the other side of it with some success. So I agree with that, but he has to win it, really, to be honest, and that's the only real way you see forward. And being reliant on winning a competition is, because even in football, like, anything can happen. Like, even if you're playing well, a deflection goes in last minute, all of a sudden you're out, and you can't be reliant. You shouldn't have to be reliant on those kind of things, especially in a cup competition. But I do agree with him. If we do come out the other side, of some success as a pathway forward there. But yeah, it's not an easy pathway.
Yeah, and the pathways as the season have progressed have just been limiting. And the way we've gone out of tournaments and the way the pathways have kind of, or like the roads have been blocked in kind of every way. So the league was gone a long time ago in terms of getting any sort of success, whether it be European football or whatever. Then the Carabao, then the league, then the FA Cup, and now it's literally everything on. Basically, his whole Tottenham future riding on this one competition. And yeah, I just don't know. I don't know. I mean, we can do it. That's the reality. We can do it. The strength of our squad compared to the strengths of the other squads in the tournament. There's no reason, in terms of that sentiment alone, is why we can't do it. But I just can't see us being able to do it. That's the reality. And if we don't do it, you know, that's it. He's done.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
So, yeah, that is the kind of quotes that we've brought to you from the interview. Quite some interesting stuff there. So let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. What were your thoughts on the Ange Postecoglou interview on Optasport with Mark Sforza? But thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always,
Come on, you Spurs.